welcome to my channel where I talk about how to heal chronic fatigue and adrenal fatigue by healing our old emotional wounds, the ones from our childhood, the childhood traumas that we may not even know that we had. I particularly focus on attachment trauma. I think it's one of the least talked about and one of the most common wounds that we carry in our lives that is not really discussed and is more difficult to pinpoint. The beauty of having chronic fatigue or adrenal fatigue that is caused by those things is that our bodies, with all of our symptoms, our collection of symptoms and the chakras that are going awry, can lead us to the wounds and lead us to the attachment traumas, because a lot of times attachment traumas we don't have any memory. It was during these formative years that were pre-memory. So if we don't have memory, how do we heal these things? Well, lucky for us, we have these pesky symptoms, collection of symptoms that are trying to ruin our lives. It often feels like what they're actually doing is sending messages to us. We just have to learn how to translate them. We just have to learn how to use them to heal. Well, today I'm talking about releasing emotions. And by that I mean safely releasing emotions, how to safely release our emotions, but also productively release our emotions so that we actually heal things. That's the goal, right? The first thing I want to talk about is the fact that these emotions sometimes can take a lot of digging to find. As I was referring to in the beginning, if our emotions have been dissociated from, if we have dissociated from our emotions to such an extent that they have become physical symptoms, they're going to be really hard to access. It's not as simple as, oh, I seem to have unconscious wounds. Let me think for a while and they'll just come to me and then I'll have a big release and be able to heal them. No, it doesn't happen that way. It's a lot more complicated than that because these developed from patterns that happened over decades. We have these behavioral and psychological patterns of disconnecting from these painful emotions, which started in childhood because as a child, we have very limited resources, emotional resources, to deal with emotional pain in our environment, coming from our caregivers or in our environment. So we have to, in order to protect ourselves, a lot of times, especially people who are highly sensitive or empaths, that when we feel a pain that is overwhelming to our sensitivity, we end up disconnecting our head from our bodies a little bit. And every time a pain happens that is overwhelming to our sensitivities, we separate a little more. And we can develop patterns of separating from, rejecting, and dissociating from every negative emotion or sensation that we have in our body. Now, that's a little extreme to talk about every negative emotion, but I have come to the conclusion that that was my patterning. And so every time a negative something came up, every time I had a negative sensation in my body, it was like, this has to go away. I can't deal with this. This is too much. I was not aware of how unrealistic that was, but my inner child, we have an inner child, but it feels like one and the same, right? We've been with our inner child. We have an adult self and a child self in our bodies, metaphorically, but they feel the same. It's so you have thoughts and you don't realize that that's a childish thought until you start to learn this stuff where you can start identifying, oh, that is a life or death response. That's black or white, or, oh, I'm in a victim mentality. That means I'm embodying my child self. Until you do things like that, until you have realizations like that, it's all just one. You're just you, right? You're you in here. So this takes a lot of conscious work and conscious attention. So bringing our symptoms, making our symptoms, translating them into emotions takes a lot of work because it's decades of patterning that turned the emotions into physical symptoms by rejecting those things. And so now the integration process takes a lot of work and time, but it is some of the most rewarding work and time that you will have ever spent because you can possibly heal this illness. And Jesus, isn't anything worth that? These illnesses are so miserable. Anyway, so I'm not going to go into how to get to the emotion in this video. I do that in other videos. But once you have an emotional wave, then you've got to know what to do. Now, in order to have a productive emotional wave, you needed to be creating a safe, loving space, bringing safe, loving energy to whatever you brought to your conscious mind. So whatever conclusion that you've realized or belief that you've realized that you've been carrying and not conscious of, like I'm not good enough, like there's never enough for me, like my needs come last. I had a recent release and it had to do with child pain, that I was trying so hard to be good. I was just trying so hard. I did everything that I possibly could. I just was trying to be good. I worked so hard at it and it didn't pay off. In fact, it like ended up harming my health and this huge emotion, this grief. I had a big sharp pain of grief in my heart as I was releasing this because it was grief, and it was grief over the self. I was grieving myself, and that is part of this process. Part of the process of healing is grieving the old self. In order to let go of the old self to create the new self, the new version of yourself, you have to grieve the loss of the old self that tried so hard, that you worked so hard to create, to be safe in this world and happy, just doing the best you can, trying, always trying. Aren't all of us always trying? Like, we're just trying so hard. So I had this huge release, but I had been creating space for that for a long time. And creating space doesn't have to take a lot of energy. When I say that, I mean, it just means that the energy that you're coming to that belief is kindness, is compassion, is love, acceptance, and gratitude for it. The gifts that it gave me to do that, to create a personality that was not my true self, to alter my personality, to get the most love that I needed, ended up getting me more love, more acceptance, more safety, getting more approval, avoiding rejection. So you can have gratitude for that. And when you create that space, eventually your soul or your inner child, however you want to think about it, will bring up, when it deems you ready, will bring up the emotion. And you're going to have a big wave. Now, I'm a pro dissociator. I don't know about you, but I have to be really careful to not shut that off, to shut that down. As soon as I feel tears, I've finally gotten to the place where I'm like, oh my God, tears, yes! Like, I have tears. I have a tear. Okay, okay, just like, hold that thought. Even if I'm in the middle of the conversation, I'm like, okay, hold that thought. I've got to go cry. I have to go cry. And everybody's like, oh, you have to cry. And I'm like, no, this is amazing. I have to go cry. This is great. I'm going to have a huge release. That's where I am now, but it took a long time to get there. And so I personally have to be alone because it's very hard for me to do. I have to be in a room with the lights off. You don't have to do this, but in order for me to actually have these help me make a safe space for the tears to come out, I like darkness so my nervous system can be really calm and alone in the room that I know people cannot hear me because I get really self-conscious. It's that old pesky shame wound. So releasing emotions. So what you want to do is imagine yourself as a vessel, a container. Your body has been a container for these emotions for your whole life. And they've been growing because the wound keeps getting poked and then the same pattern, so that the wound keeps getting bigger and bigger over your lifetime, which is why eventually it gets to an illness. But your body has been a container for that. A crucial concept for releasing emotion is to be careful not to identify with that emotion. But we all do it. It's just that to start becoming conscious of the fact that you are actually a vessel. Your body is a vessel that your soul is working through. You come into this world with wounds that your soul needs to heal. This is my belief. And it's true no matter how you want to conceptualize it. So this is how I like to conceptualize it. So I come onto this earth, I have these wounds that my soul is needing to heal for the soul's lifetime. So in order for that to happen, my body is a container, it's a vessel. That is an important shift in mindset, because if you stay in this idea of my dad did this to me, my mom did this to me, I'm a victim, I'm in pain, you're identifying as the emotion. And again, we all do this until we become conscious of the fact that we want to shift that we need to shift that, and conscious of the fact that we're doing it, because that keeps us in a victim mindset. And we can't heal from a victim mindset. We can't heal from a victim state. We can't do it if you're embodying victim. So in essence, what you're doing is you need to be slightly detached from the emotion. And that is a scary thing for me to say, because I am a pro detacher. Like, if I detach, I'll dissociate. So it's a very fine, I have to be super careful about the amount of detachment that I have, but other people have the problem from the other direction of identifying so much with the emotion that they can't detach. They don't know how to detach from it because it's so visceral in their body. They've been holding this for so long. And I feel a lot of that too. I mean, obviously I've had lots of victim states. And when you're in a victim state, you're identifying as the emotion. In the emotion, I am the same as this emotion. This emotion is part of me. It is an innate part of me. Like I am part of it. We are intertwined. We are one and the same. I'm highly attached to it. So separating yourself can be difficult for a lot of people. It's difficult, but if you're like me, then the risk is detaching. So the key is to identify with the emotions enough to conjure the actual emotion, the frequency. So to bring up the emotion. So that's my problem. So I tend to be so detached that I can't feel the emotion itself. That's a problem because then you can never release it. And then on the other side of the spectrum, you can be so attached and stuck in that victim state that you can never heal it. You can cry and cry and cry and cry and cry and cry and cry about this, and you're never going to heal it because you are identified with it. So it's this happy medium of in between. That's why I like to think of myself as a vessel. My inner child is in there, and my inner child needs to embody these emotions, and my inner child can identify with those emotions, is allowed to, I mean. But I, as the adult with perspective and resources, am slightly detached, and I'm observing. So in my mind, when I have a release, what I'm doing is, in the beginning, I'm imagining I have to replay or say out loud or think the phrase that conjured up the emotion so that I can feel it, and I can say different phrases that will bring it up even more, just whatever's coming to mind. But then as I start to really cry and become aware of my body that I'm vibrating, I take myself back and I see it. It feels like it's in the back of my head, me as the adult, and just pouring this loving energy. It's got this like monk energy, like this very peaceful. It doesn't have to be like, oh, you poor thing, you poor victim thing. No, it's just loving presence. I just think of the energy you get from a little, like imagining a little Buddhist monk sitting in the corner of your room watching with just, and he's just love. He just has love. He's not judging you. That is you. You are bringing that energy to your inner child, and you're just there. And you can say, in your mind, you can say, I love you. I love you. I'm so sorry you're experiencing this. I'm so sorry you're hurting. You're just being there, and you're not having to do anything. You are releasing. Your body is a vessel. So your body is vibrating at the I always say this, but it's vibrating at the frequency of the emotion. That's my experience. That there's a different vibration for each type of crying, each type of emotion that you're releasing. So you're crying every time, but it's a different cry. And I think that's fascinating. So my nerdy intellect is also a help because it helps me detach, because I'm like, this is fascinating. This is fascinating. What are my sensations? Am I cold and clammy? Do I have a sharp pain anywhere? Where is the pain in my body? Is it in my gut? Is it in my throat? Is it in my face? Is it in my heart? Nerd, nerd alert. So anyway, that helps me detach, but you don't have to be so nerdy if you don't want to. But I think it's fascinating that we have these different cries. So that's the key. It's this middle threshold. You're doing both. Your inner child is identifying with the emotion enough to bring that emotion up, to be able to release it, to be able to have the feelings, to actually emote, to actually feel the feelings. Because you have to be able to feel the feelings to cry. And then on the other side is you're also being this observer self. As I've mentioned in other videos, you have to have done all this work beforehand to calm the nervous system. And that in itself is a practice of learning how to regulate your emotions. And so you're coming from this very experienced emotional regulation place, even though you didn't know how to regulate your emotions until you got this illness. After this illness, the key is to reset your nervous system, and in so doing, you end up learning how to regulate your emotions because they're actually one and the same. If you can regulate your nervous system, you can regulate your emotional response in a healthy way, not a dissociative disconnection, abandonment way, in a healthy way of, oh, I see what's happening. I feel the reaction in my body and I know what to do. I need to go inward and be there for my inner child. So these emotional releases are, you are both. You are your inner child and your adult resourced, emotionally resourced self. knowledgeable that this is an important process and that you love your inner child. You are there for her or him, and she can cry or he can cry as long as they need. And emotional releases can scare people because with these really core and deep emotional wounds, it can often feel like you could cry forever. It feels like you have this mountain of energy that you could cry forever. And the truth is, it doesn't work that way. You can't. My mom, who's a psychologist, used to joke with patients, have you ever heard a story of somebody crying forever? Like, you don't hear it because it doesn't happen. What happens is your emotions are released in these waves. They're usually 30 seconds to 90 seconds in length. You're crying and crying for that length of time, and then you get a reprieve. Your body calms down. And then you start to feel like it revving up again, and then you have another wave. It's a little like vomiting, which is unpleasant, but it is because you can sort of sense when there's another wave coming and you're going to vomit some more or you're going to release some more. So you're going to know when you're done, and you're going to know when you need to just keep sitting there and just being there. And if something comes up, it'll come up. And if you're done, you're done. And you'll have more release another day. Like, there's no judgment. There's no worry. There's trust that your body is so wise. Oh my God, it's so wise. But we have to get wise with it. We have to get wise in our minds as well, so that we learn to work with this body wisdom, because it can be very confusing for a lot of us. Me, example number 1. This whole process is learning how to get in touch with your body again and enjoy being connected to your body, loving your body again and the sensations that it brings, and learning to love every wave, every positive and negative wave that it brings. And that's hard to do because some of them are really unpleasant. And unfortunately, all the unpleasant ones are the ones that are stuck in our body. Because the thing is, if we have accepting energy for the emotion, they don't stay. They're transient. All emotions are transient. If you think about the positive emotions, why don't those ever get stuck in our bodies? It's because we accept them. Like, come on. Oh, I feel joy. Come on, come in the joy. I want to feel that. Well, then they go away. It's like they're transient. All emotions are transient unless you try to push them away and you say, you are not welcome here. Get out. Nope, not feeling that. That's when they get stuck. Ironic and infuriating, but true. Okay, now if you find yourself releasing emotion and getting overloaded, like that you're feeling yourself identifying so strongly, because these are intense emotions, and it's not that easy to just be disconnected. And it's also not easy, depending on your patterning, it's either not easy to feel the emotion, to bring it up, or it's not easy to detach yourself from the emotion because they've been in our body. They've been our experience in our body for so many years, and that was our experience as children, and we've never processed that emotion. So these can be really intense. So if you find yourself releasing emotion and crying and not really able to keep distance and be that adult self and allow the child self to release while the adult self is loving and accepting, you're finding yourself having a really hard time, you're getting overloaded, you're getting more and more worked up, that the crying is getting more intense, and you're starting to feel like this is too intense, then use havening. I will say another sign, or you start having urges to hit yourself or hurt yourself, even if you're having like images of hitting yourself or just urges to like want to hit on yourself, you're getting overloaded, your emotional system is getting flooded. So you need to find a way to calm your body down and get that attachment while creating that loving space. And the best, most effective, and easiest way that I know to do this is to use havening techniques. I will link a video of a full description down below for havening techniques, but very quickly, whatever emotion you're feeling in that moment that's overloading you, whether it's shame, you're feeling ashamed, whether you're feeling guilty, whether you're feeling sadness, grief, anger, whatever it is, usually one of the ones that overwhelms is something like shame. So let's use ashamed. So you're feeling ashamed. So you're ashamed, 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 ashamed. You will feel, if you do that long enough, it shouldn't take that long. It might feel long, but it won't take very long, just a few minutes. If you use havening frequently, you'll get an effect faster. But if you don't use it very often, then it might take a few minutes. Your body will start calming down. It will. It's a physiological response to those kinds of strokes. So you will start to notice yourself calming down. What havening does is you are telling your physical body what maybe in that moment and energetically you can't give to yourself. So energetically, we need to be giving love, compassion, acceptance, and gratitude to that emotion. But if we're not able to send that energy, then we can send that energy by physicality, by using these loving touches and strokes on our body while we're expressing the emotion that is coming up in that moment. So that's if you do end up getting sort of sucked in by the emotion and you're feeling really pulled in and you're not able to stay detached as the observer. That's when to pull in havening techniques. Havening techniques is the most amazing. It's the most amazing tool. I swear by it because it's the emergency valve. It's like if anything starts going wrong, you pull out havening. That's what I do. If anything gets out of control, and that doesn't really happen anymore, but it did for a long time for me. And if you ever feel overloaded, havening techniques will help. I can almost guarantee it. Those are the basics of how to productively release negative emotions that are unprocessed. Processing the unprocessed emotions that are stuck in your body and making you ill. Those are the basics for that. If you would like to work with me one-on-one to accelerate your progress or just be a support to you, gaining one-on-one knowledge of my process, please feel free to contact me. My email address is down below. I would love to work with you. I hope this video was helpful. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day, and I will talk to you on the next video. Bye.